I'll put in timestamps for you to use. The timeline is set up chronologically, therefore earlier dates are on the left and later dates are on the right. By using this fact, we should start at 1713. 1713 was when the British took control of Acadia. What stopped them from taking control of it earlier? What was the gatekeeper between more farmland? Well, it was the French. The British won the War of Spanish Succession. Personally, I don't know much about that war, but let me explain the ending. It means that representatives from France, Britain, and Spain go to some meeting and negotiate on agreements post-war. This agreement was called the Treaty of Utrecht, which happened to give Acadia away from France to Britain. For those of you who missed school like Liam, Acadia is made out of what is now the maritime provinces in Canada. 1713 was also the year when Acadians in Acadia were told to leave the province in a year.
And the Acadians were like,
No, please, don't do this. We have land and family here.
British like, whatever. You just have it taken off.
1713 also sparked a war between Britain and the Mi'kmaq from 1713 to 1752, marking it the longest war against colonization in northern of Central America. But how did this come to be? The British weren't exactly seeking for partnerships with the First Nation peoples, and the British settlers are already pushing First Nations out of First Nation land. And the Mi'kmaq knew this and declared war on the British, which brings us to 1730. Britain saw the lack of Acadians leaving Acadia and decided to make a deal with the Acadians. The Acadians would need to take an oath so that Acadia would basically be modern Switzerland. Neutral. The oath
Previous to the beginning of the 7 Years' War, jumping a few years ahead, 1754 was when conflict was heating up between the French and the British in the Ohio Valley, aka western boundary of the 13th colony, aka British soon-to-be rebellious teenager.
By 1756, it went all global, fighting in a British colony, a French colony, whatever colony you choose, and there was a total of 9 European countries competing in either the French or the Brits side.
The Brits wanted to destroy the French Navy, and therefore dominating the seas, trade routes, and...
Dominating the fucking world! Okay, we need you to take another oath.
Pourquoi?
So, war between us and the French is pretty likely, and
You want us to fight with you?
yes.
No.
And so, Britain began deporting a total of 11,000 Acadians from Acadia from 1755 to 1763.
Some of the Acadians made their escape to New France or to the Mi'kmaq. Near the Plains of Abraham!
Some dude with the name of James Wolfe wants to capture Quebec.
And we're going to take siege on it.
That's very true, and so he did, after pounding the city several times.
New plan, let's move upstream on the middle of the night, climb on a cliff and go to the plains and flank the French.
And so he did. Marquis de Montcalm was the man who led the French in the Battle of the Plains of the Abraham. He sent a counterattack instantly on the 4,500 Britishmen awaiting in the plains. The French also had the same value of soldiers, but there's one thing that you need to account. Quality. The French mostly had volunteers, meanwhile the British were experienced.
Private, oh, it feels so good.
Je ne veux pas y aller.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
That is all. Did I mention both leaders died in battle?
Meme review.
And so, the French army retreated, then came back to Quebec on April 1760, and wrecked the British twice. Once by attacking the British head-on, and twice for when the French surrounded the British in the city of Quebec. Both parties ran out of supplies, and both the French and the British sent ships. But at the end, the British came first, and in the true olden French white flag fashion, the governor of New France at the time surrendered New France to the British. He also negotiated on some of the terms in the Treaty of Paris. Next up on the list, 1763. 1763 was the year when the 7 Years' War ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. A treaty on which was signed at the bottom, signed at Paris, which has a few details you might need to know, especially because you're probably marking this right now. Okay, the Brits agreed to the French on not attacking against French allies and would allow Catholics in New France to practice their religion. And the French agreed to lose almost all of its claims in North America, but was able to keep the colony of Guadeloupe and a small cod fishery in North America. You know this guy? If not, remember him for later. His name is Pontiac, and the person accompanying him is a Minwewe. Right now, he's organizing an alliance with a bunch of First Nations against the British. Okay, now I just need to keep these kids playing nice with each other, especially with that kid next door.
A few moments later.
First, let's put in some ground rules. Ground rules? What's that? That's called foreshadowing right there. And so, Britain made the Royal Proclamation. Why are these jumbled up?
A few moments later.
There are a few points that you need to know so that I can have my A. 1. They wanted to assimilate the Canadians. The way the Brits did it is by making New France have a British-style government similar to 13 colonies. They are also banning Catholics for having positions in government, and throwing French civil law out the window, and encouraging 13 colonies' citizens to move into Quebec by restricting settlers from freely moving west. 2. The British wanted a better relationship with the First Nations. They did this by making a proclamation line restricting 13 colonies from the supposed Indian Territory. Well, unless they have made an agreement between the First Nations first. Okay, so remember what I said about Pontiac and Minwewe? Yeah, I'm going chronologically, so I'm jumping from place to place. For that, their intimidating alliance and a series of agreements with the British, cooling off conflicts on 1765, where the British accepted that their defeats in the 7 Years' War didn't give them rights to the First Nation land. 1774, Quebec. I've decided to give some of your arts back. Start with the basics. Catholic people in New France are allowed to practice their religion. We're also allowing Canadians to hold positions in the government, and I retrieved the French civil law from the roof of the second floor when I threw it out the window. We extended the territory of Quebec past the proclamation line without asking the Indians, of course. Just don't tell them. Last, and fairly good executed cliffhanger, 13 colonies is at war against Britain for independence. Now, the past doesn't matter. That's why they call it the present. Alexa! Play Never Gonna Give You Up.
Here's Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley on Amazon Music.